Hey guys, this is just an impromptu video. By the way, this is No Shave November, so I apologize for the bearded man that you see here before you. But I wanted to take just a few minutes. I've gotten this question so many times. I decided to just do a real quick video on it. Should I sell my house or should I rent it? And it really comes down to there's a framework. Whenever someone asks me that, I immediately go to a framework. And I figured instead of me just kind of keeping that in my head, give it to you. So now you can think through these things in light of what's best for you on your journey to financial freedom. So I'm going to just share some quick thoughts. By the way, this was prompted by Megan Clute in our community. So Megan, I hope this is helpful to you and helps you think through this for yourself. So let me just share my screen. And all right, let me pull it up here. Okay, so first and foremost, all this is in light of our goal to financial freedom. If it's not in light of that, then really we don't have a good basis to even start from. What is financial freedom? It's passive income must be greater than monthly expenses. You hear us talk about that on the show all the time, and so that's how I'm treating this question. So then there's a few questions that come up. First of all, let me just say this. Where you live is not an asset. Your home that you live in is not an asset to you because Robert Kiyosaki says an asset is what brings money towards you. And when we live in a home, it's literally going away from us. The cash flow is an expense. So now I'm going to think about this now. The home that you live in can be either continue to be a liability to you where you pay monthly for it, or it could be used as an asset in a couple different ways. So does selling the home get me closer to this goal or does renting it? So I'm just thinking about those two things side by side. And so then there's some follow-up questions. So how much would I net if I sold it? So after commissions, after fees, after staging the home, setting up, if you needed to get storage to put your furniture away or whatever it might be, then what is, after all that's said and done, how much would I end up in my pocket to use for something else? And then whatever that money is, how much it is, what would I do with it? Okay, because that's really what's more important. Would I just use it as a down payment on another liability on on a new home? Would I use it to invest in some sort of asset that would create cash flows? Those two things are very important. The next question, how much could I rent the home for? And so you look up things like Zillow.com, Realtor.com, any of those different online services. You can find out what in your area, if you have a 3-bed, 2-bath or a 4-bed, 2-bath, how much could I rent it for on a long-term basis? And then only then you can compare how much do I pay on it right now? What's my mortgage payment, my taxes, my insurance, my association fee? All those things are considered your debt service, your monthly amount that's required for you to rent that property. You have to continue that. So then you net out how much you would have left over, okay, to see if it makes sense. Also, in light of this, which I didn't write here, but I asked Megan in our community, is how much did you put down on the house? Like, in other words, how much equity do you have in your property so that we can compare it? Would it be better for you to continue to have that money locked up or to free it essentially by selling the property? And then what we could use that for. And the second thing I'm looking for in there is your return on investment. So how much money did you put in there that now based on the monthly rental amount, do you actually receive back? And you can see how much that percentage is. I'm going to give you an example of that in just a second. And then the last question is, could I rent my property on a short-term basis? There's certain areas of the country where it's just not allowable. And for whatever reason, the city has shut it down or the county or whatever, they've decided that you can't rent your home or any asset on a short-term basis. But most places you can. And the way you can do that is look up things like Airbnb.com, bookings.com, VRBO.com, and look at are there places around your home or your rental property that are rented on a short-term basis. And if so, then you could look at that as an option as well. And just a quick plug here. We've had so many people ask us, Russ and I, about wakeupinbirmingham.com, our short-term rental business. We started it literally 6 months ago, went from one unit, which I'll share with you more about that in a meantime, in just a minute. My long-term rental turned into a short-term rental, and so I'll share that. Went from one unit to now we're up to 11 units just 5 months later, and we're about to add 7 more. So we're going to be at 18 units within 6 months. If you want to learn this, how to just take the very first step, we have a 90-day short-term rental mastermind that we are launching in January. And if you want to be a part of that, you have a child that wants to start a side hustle, whatever it may be, go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/STR mastermind, and you can be a part of it. It's literally $400 a month. So it's $1,200 for 3 months. And your goal is to have at least one unit up and running within 60 days that will produce $800 a month net cash flow to you. It's pretty exciting. And actually, you're going to learn from our operator, Clint, who has taken us literally from 0 units to 11 units and now 18 within 6 months. So anyways, just a heads up on that. So this is the framework that I'm thinking about in light of this question: should I sell my home or rent it? And now I'm going to zoom back out here. And Megan, these are your questions. You mentioned you found acreage you fell in love with. We currently have a mortgage on a starter home. You gave me, but the thing that I want to point out is when you brought this up, you only said your interest rate on your current house, which, by the way, very low interest rate. But in any way, shape, or form, did any of my questions come back to what is your interest rate? No, because ultimately it's a distraction. What is financial freedom? It's passive income greater than monthly expenses. That's it, cash flow. And so what we did here, Megan, you started to answer some of these questions. You said your total monthly payments are $883. That's on your current residence. You have found that homes in the area rent between $650 to $1,400 per month. So that's helpful. And you don't have any major repairs that are necessary. So that was the number 3 question here that I asked. And finally, you didn't put a down payment on the home, which is pretty amazing to finance 100% of a property. And it looks like they allow short-term rentals in your area. There's only 2, and one of those is a winery. So that's actually a pretty interesting thing. And then lastly, if you were to sell your home, you said you'd probably net somewhere around $3,500. That's a worst case scenario, but needless to say, that's helpful for us to know. Okay, so now here's my thoughts, Megan, based on your answers and this framework that we talked through. Here's my thoughts. So number 1, there's 3 options. So number 1, long-term rental. If you could net, or if you could create $1,200 as a gross income, gross rental income on a long-term basis, 12-month lease, 18-month lease, whatever it may be, then you would have to consider, okay, there's an $883 expense. And here's the other thing. This is a lesser known thing when people are considering renting their home. They don't consider the fact that they're starting a business. And in that, you need to have built in that someone else will manage your property, even if you choose to do it initially. To rent a property through a rental management company is about 10% per month of the rent. So I'm considering here, if you think about this, $1,200 going in as far as monthly rental. You have the $883 expense, and then we have to factor in $120, which is 10% of the gross rent, as a management fee. That's going to leave you about $195 a month of free cash flow. Okay. Now, some of that may actually be having to go into the kitty for maintenance or repairs or something like that. So that is the minimum, if I'm you, that I'm going to consider doing this as a long-term rental. Okay, because $2,400 a year is not a ton if you start having some repairs or frequent turnover or vacancies or anything like that. So, but this would be the minimum. If you get to $1,400 per month, like you said, is the top end of your range, awesome. I think that becomes really good. Now, the other thing that I'm considering in a long-term rental is the fact that $2,400, so I take 195 times 12, I just rounded up to 2,400. The fact that you put $0 in to be able to purchase this property. This is how Robert Kiyosaki does cash flow. He says your ROI is your amount that you get annual cash flow divided by how much your initial investment was. Since yours was zero, you have an infinite return. That's pretty amazing. Okay. But again, I would also factor in the fact I would not do anything less than $200 a month because you're not going to be prepared in the event of maintenance or other things. Okay. Second option is that you sell the property. Okay. So here's how I'm thinking about it. If I sold the property, you told me the number is about $3,500 that you get in your pocket. So how do we actually decide if that's worth it? Number one, that $3,500, could you buy an asset with it, or could you pay off a debt that would give you cash flow on either side of that coin? Again, the whole idea of this is, am I creating passive income or am I reducing expenses? Because that is my goal in financial freedom. So do you have an asset you could buy that for $3,500 that would create a cash flow? And if so, what is that? I can't answer that for you, but that's just one of the thoughts I have. Now, if I have a debt that's worth $3,500, how much cash flow would that create? Okay, then I can decide, would that make more sense, or would it make more sense to leave the $3,500 in the property that I have and subsequently rent it as we set up here and create $2,400 a year, $200 a month? Or we're going to get into short-term rentals in just a second. And I'm going to show you that as a potential as well. Now, you could also use the $3,500 over here to purchase another home. My question is, I don't know the parameters of the acres that you're talking about. Could the $3,500 be used as a down payment? If so, you're not necessarily getting anywhere closer to financial freedom. You're just moving your liability from one property to the other. And then it's a matter of, did the new payment of the new house go up more than 883, or did it go down? And that's the only way I know how to compare on this this monthly expenses side of the equation. Is it getting you closer or farther from financial freedom? Now, I understand that this is extremely objective that I'm telling you. I'm not emotionally charged by the property. You love the acreage, and it may be that it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the payment could go up, but it's exactly the property that you've always dreamed of. I totally understand that. But if you're just asking me to objectively look at this in terms of financial freedom, this is how I'm thinking about it. Okay. Now, lastly, if I look at renting this out on a short-term basis, here's what I know. I don't know your area. It looks like there's very limited resources in terms of short-term rentals in your area. So that could be a really good benefit. That means that there's maybe more demand than there is opportunity or supply, and you could meet that supply need for your area. I don't know. The thing that I would also look at is, on the listings that are nearby, are they packed out, or do they have a lot of spaces where people are not renting it? Because that could be an indicator one way or the other. Okay. Now, but if we're able to set this up properly on your current home and rent it on a short-term basis, a 3-bedroom home, which I believe is what you said in your comments, should net $800 per bedroom per month. Okay. Now, there's a chance when you look at the other listings that this is not ring true. Okay. But just as a rule, that's how we have been taught, and that's how we're seeing our business turn out. If that's the case, now in order for you to make your home a short-term rental, you do have additional investment. You have to have a design fee, furnishing fees. Like, it's roughly about $20,000 for a 3-bedroom. Now, you could use some of what you already have in the house and potentially lower that price. But you need to be prepared that it's going to cost you more to set it up properly, because you have to have it completely, a whole entire household worth of, let's say, pots, pans, toiletries, laundry, all the linens and everything else. So just roughly $20,000. But if it creates $2,400 per month, That's pretty solid. I mean, you're talking about really adding up on this passive income side and potentially getting you really close to financial freedom. So, this is the way in which I'm thinking about your scenario, Megan. I hope this is valuable to you. What questions did you have as I went through this that maybe as you're looking at this, and this is meant for Megan, for anybody in our community, anybody here on YouTube that's looking at this, what questions do you have in light of what I just said that you would love to understand or that would affect how you would think about buying or selling a home or renting it to get closer to financial freedom? Put those in the comments. I'll be glad to get back to you on those things. And I hope this is valuable. Hope it helps you on your path to financial freedom.